Good morning. I'm Dennis Shaw, and it's my pleasure to serve as this morning's worship associate for this service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Charlotte County, Florida. This service is being broadcast via Zoom and YouTube. Unfortunately, there are trolls on the internet who look for personal information and then use it to attack folks. So we have to be careful. Consequently, the Communications Committee has asked us to use first names only, and unless we gain permission from individuals to use his or her first name. I wish to express my gratitude to technology wizards, Corey and Tom, and also a big thank you to Linda and Jim and members of the UUFCC choir for this morning's music. I also need to remind you of a couple simple procedures which will help this broadcast run smoothly. We will use the chat feature for the introduction of new folks only. Otherwise, remain muted throughout the rest of the service, even when singing, but please do sing. Have a chalice or a candle available for our chalice lighting ritual. And at the end of the service, we will virtually gather for a social time. But do not unmute and begin conversing until you see the posting that invites you to begin. Your patience will be appreciated because our directors need a moment or two to close down the YouTube connection. The chat will be Zoom only. To learn more about our fellowship, you can email Mary Jane, our office administrator, at office@uufcc.org, or visit our website or call. We're glad that you're with us this morning. And now we will light the chalice. The chalice lighting words are from Deborah Falk. A chalice lit in our midst is a symbol of our liberal faith, a faith built on the foundations of freedom, reason, and welcome. A faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that envisions a world flourishing with equality for all people, a faith that demands the living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. This tiny flame is a symbol of the spark of all that was within each of us. And as my friend Tim will now come forward and light the chalice. And if you'll join me in our traditional recitation, love is the spirit of this fellowship and service is its law. This is our aspiration, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. Now, please light your chalices at home. And we will listen to a song, Fire of Commitment. And this has been produced by Linda and Jim and the UUFCC choir.
From the light of days remembered, burns a beacon bright and blue, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, can begin. From the stories of our living brings us a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Our opening words were chosen by worship associate Sharon. It's a poem by American poet and writer Alma Luz Villanova. The future is not in heaven or far away. It's all around us. And small human rituals can connect us to its presence. And of course, the greatest challenge and gift is to see the future in each other. We have a long tradition at UUFCC of sharing joys and concerns and life milestones by entering them into the Book of Life. Because of the pandemic, we have modified this tradition. You may email your joys and sorrows and personal milestones to bookoflife@uufcc.org. Messages should be sent no later than Saturday prior to the service. During this morning service, following the receipt of your message, the worship associate will read your words to the congregation. So now I will share the joys and sorrows and my milestones that I have received this week. After I have completed reading, we'll maintain several moments of silence. This is a joy. So it's from Jackie and Laurie. So very grateful. Jackie and I are celebrating our 36th anniversary together today, September 5th, and are so glad to share our joy with our loving community here. Another joy is Bryce, the fiance of Corey, has just received a major promotion. He is the new district manager of the Circle K chain. John Lee sent me a message that his granddaughter Peyton is now recovering at home partially because there were sicker children that needed her bed. There's a long article about Peyton in the Braden paper, and I'm sure if you contact John, he will forward it to you. The next is a sorrow. It's from Sharon Whitehill, who was scheduled to be today's worship associate. She suffered a detached retina on Thursday and had to have emergency surgery on Friday. She writes, "I have a new sorrow, but also a joy. You all know that it's been less than a month since my husband, Jim, died. And I know you also know that within that great sorrow has been the joy of your love and support. Then just a few days ago, after a lovely warm visit from Robert and Peggy Dawn, with yet another 6-pack of Guinness for me, I suddenly realized I couldn't see out of my left eye, a detached retina, it turns out. No one knows why. And yet after surgery Friday, here I am with blurred vision, but I'm recovering. It has been a blessing to have my brother and sister-in-law's additional support, not to mention the eye-saving medical procedure and the privilege of excellent health coverage. So I conclude with that joy. And now we will experience a moment of silence for meditation.
Stirrings of compassion.
This morning's sermon I've entitled, Where Are We Going? Or A Journey on the UUFCC Ship of Faith. I will start this morning's sermon with the same words that I used during the last two services. I'm sure that we have all had the experience of hosting a tune or a rhyme in our minds that we repeat seemingly without control over and over and over again. The round, where did we come from, has been recycling in my brain for about 6 weeks now. I'm hoping it will end when this sermon concludes in about 20 minutes. While I love the song, I'm sure we're all ready for a new tune. Most of you are familiar with the song. It is published in our UU hymnal supplement, Singing the Journey, and we have sung it numerous times over the years as a round. The original words were written by Paul Gauguin, the famous French post-impressionist artist, and set to music by Brian Tate. This morning, like during the last two previous services, we will sing it as a call and response. So join me in this simplified version. Each line is repeated, so I will sing a phrase, and then you just answer by singing what you've just heard. The interesting aspect of this act of worship is that I'm assuming you can hear me, but since you are muted, I can't hear you. I have to take it on faith that you are singing back to me. And again, even if you think you can't sing and are uncomfortable doing so, I'm counting on you. So sing when it's your turn. So if Tim will give me an F. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? I'm sure you all did a wonderful job. As I have on the two preceding Sundays, my remarks will focus on this liberal religious community, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Charlotte County, Florida. But my limited scope should in no way be interpreted that we exist independently of what is happening around us in Charlotte County, in the state of Florida, in our country, or around the world. I firmly believe that the actions of the individual do generate ripples that contribute to the creation of the most powerful tsunami. The story I told 2 weeks ago in an attempt to answer the question, where did we come from, is a strong example of the power of one person, our founder, Lucille Haig, her vision, talents, discipline, energy, and love have been expanding exponentially over more than 5 decades. Think about all the members and friends I mentioned last week during my message that addressed the question, what are we? I challenge you to try and calculate how many lives have been positively affected by the gifts and talents of these folks. And they continue to give of those, even though we're in a worldwide pandemic. The question that I'm wrestling with this week, where are we going, exists in a realm that's beyond my calculation or even speculations. There are so many variables involved, and I have concluded that the only way forward is through our imaginations. And even if we could foresee the future, I doubt we would recognize what we were experiencing. The future is indeed a riddle and a mystery. As I struggled over the past week with the question, where are we going? I decided to get out my sketch pad and a box of crayons. In the past, when faced with major roadblocks, messages from my right hemisphere often provided a means to proceed. Sure enough, within a half an hour of scribbling, I had drawn an image of a vehicle that would transport us into the future and hover over our community. From this vantage point, we could at least confirm our continued existence and perhaps to some degree evaluate our progress. My vehicle, unlike the sleek, flashing sports model featured in the wonderful movie fantasy Back to the Future, is blimp-sized, with more than enough room to carry our whole congregation and interested guests. Our ship is designed in the shape of the symbol for infinity. At the point where the lines intersect, there's a portal, a flaming chalice. This entry expands and contracts to allow access to the tiniest and largest members and is in full compliance with the American with Disabilities Act. Surprisingly, its flame doesn't burn us, but surrounds us instead with a warm sense of excitement and high expectation. As you would expect, my future mobile is not powered by a combustible engine. However, you may be surprised that it doesn't even require electricity. Our giant transport is fueled by worm power. As I completed drawing by adding the details and figures that could assure our comfort, it occurred to me that we not only needed pilots and co-pilots, but a whole crew of maintenance folks, navigators, stewards, and stewardesses. Before long, every passenger was given a task, and what I had originally envisioned as a luxury cruise evolved into a mean, lean work machine, quite appropriate for this Labor Day weekend. As I started to close my pad and collected my crayons, I decided that I should name this spectacular vehicle that will carry us into the future. Unfortunately, the name Infinity was already taken by the Japanese automaker Nissan. As Basco, my beloved pup, and I curled up for a mid-afternoon nap, the name for our ship into the future floated in. We will journey on the UUFCC Ship of Faith. During our nap, I had a dream. Every member and friend of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Charlotte County, Florida, had boarded our ship of faith, and we had successfully navigated through time and were hovering over a significantly enlarged campus of UUFCC. Apparently, our efforts to acquire adjacent properties had been successful. But despite the expansion, the sign designed by Tom to reflect Theodore Parker's quote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice," it was still standing, and the words "justice for all" were still at its base. Also, the stained glass window symbols continue to reflect the brilliance of all the world's religions. Next to the sign, a group of musicians were gathered together, singing, well, you guessed it, "Where Did We Come From?" However, their rendition was echoed in a complex, haunting round. As we floated over the grounds, We saw several new buildings that had been constructed, and they all had solar panels. There were so many diverse people. Some had light, almost white skin, but many others reflected beautiful shades of brown. The people were dressed in fashions both familiar and exotic. We watched as transports arrived with boxes and boxes of food and toiletries and even medicine to replenish the stations where volunteers distributed these gifts to folks in need. Then we witnessed healthy children and elders dancing together, strong women and men cultivating native plants that thrived and provided habitat for animals we feared were extinct. We noticed that there was a family, a man and a woman, with two small children, flying a rainbow pattern kite as a pair of men holding hands cheered them on. On the path down to the rippling creek was a female couple in a deep embrace. We were awed by the number of species of birds and butterflies, astounded that even the fire ants were assigned designated mounds of sand. The alligators, fish, and turtles cohabited in Snapper Creek, and a mother Florida panther and her offspring transversed the perimeter of the creek's bank. We felt a sense of peace as we watched the pilgrims meditate as they circled a labyrinth in the shape of the tree of life. Our curiosity was piqued as we viewed students and teachers interacting under the shade of the mighty live oak trees. We were inspired as we listened to a worship service being celebrated around a fire pit on the north side of the main building. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Charlotte County of the Future generated such an aura of peace, productivity, and harmony that we decided that despite our alien appearance, to land in the back parking lot. We prayed that our presence would not disturb or frighten these wonderful people and creatures, but we so desired to learn the secrets of their Eden that we dared to trespass. So Captain Corey descended. Since we were fueled by wiggling worms, our approach and the landing was very serene. Much to our relief, the inhabitants didn't seem the least bit frightened. It seemed as though they had experienced other visits from the past. The people and some of the animals encircled our craft and waved signs of peace and welcome. Then approaching from the circle, a petite, dark-skinned woman wearing a dark blouse with a clerical collar and a colorful flowing skirt appeared. She climbed up to the Chalice portal and magically entered the UUFCC Ship of Faith. As she entered our vessel, she surveyed our congregation with sparkling deep brown eyes and a broad contagious smile and said, "Welcome, beloved ancestors." Then she circulated and embraced each one of us, releasing an overwhelming current of love and compassion. Before we could even formulate our thoughts and questions, the small brown woman introduced herself. "I am the Reverend Serenity Cloudburst, and on behalf of the UUFCC Fellowship of the Future, I welcome you. This is indeed a holy moment because our entire community wants me to offer our deepest gratitude for the gifts and services that you so readily bestowed. Without you, we would not exist." Our shocked expressions clearly communicated our bewilderment and confusion. Finally, I found the courage to speak. "But Reverend Cloudburst, we did not make this journey to receive your gratitude and praise. We are here to find answers. We are from a time of great suffering. We are experiencing a worldwide pandemic that keeps us apart. We have lost faith in our leader, and we are bickering with one another. We are ravished by storms and fires, and rightfully fear for the very existence of our planet. How could we have inspired this utopia that we are witnessing? Reverend Cloudburst settled to the floor, spreading her vibrantly colored skirt around her, and deliberately made eye contact with each one of us and softly spoke. Please, let's forgo the formalities. You may call me Serenity. Yes, I understand that you are a congregation who has suffered and experienced significant pain. The reason that I came to you, rather than inviting you to join us outside, is that your hearts are currently too fragile to readily adapt to the richness of our atmosphere. The world has changed significantly beyond your imagining, but all life springs from what has preceded it. Perhaps my message will be clearer if I quote from one of your brilliant scientists, Carl Sagan. If you wish to make an apple pie truly from scratch, you must recreate the whole universe. We nodded in understanding as we laughed. The Reverend Serenity continued. You are a people of an inclusive faith. That faith is not based on creeds or dogma, but principles and promises. And while you repeatedly violated these, you sought forgiveness and recommitted yourselves time after time. You do believe that each person is important. You do believe that all people should be treated fairly. You do believe that the fellowship is a place where all people are accepted and where you can keep on learning together. You do believe that each person must be free to search for what is true and right in life. And you do believe that all people should have a voice and a vote about things that concern them. You believe that you should work for a peaceful, fair, and free world. You believe that you should care for our planet, Earth. And you believe that you must eliminate racism in yourselves and your institutions. Again, we nodded in understanding and agreement as we bowed our heads in reverence for these guiding statements of our faith. Reverend Serenity continued, you are living a faith that is grounded in teachings that are thousands of years old. Let me remind you that your faith is derived from the direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to renewal of spirit and an openness to the forces that uphold life. You are living a faith that is based on the words and deeds of prophetic women and men, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. You incorporated this inherited wisdom from the world's religions, which still inspire and direct our ethical and spiritual lives. You are trying to respond to God's love by loving your neighbor as yourself. You are inspired by this religious pluralism, which enriches and ennobles your faith. You deepened your understanding and expanded your vision. You embraced humanist teachings, which counsel you to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn you against idolatries of mind and spirit. Reverend Serenity once again reminded us that we are human and therefore imperfect. She made us promise to forgive one another and to forgive ourselves when we don't live up to our lofty principles. Then she rose, straightened her skirt, and headed to the Chalice portal. But before she left, she offered another essential lesson. Remember, dear ones, your faith is covenant-based. You promise to cherish all members and friends and encourage each other to honor high standards. You must respect each other's views, backgrounds, and spiritual beliefs. Value a free, open, and mutually respectful freedom of expression. Listen to each other without judgment or interpretation and speak directly with a person instead of about a person. Address issues and behaviors rather than people and personalities. Be considerate but courageous in naming actions that diminish your community. Offer forgiveness and understanding and expect that from each other. And finally, strive to respect everyone's dignity and well-being. Then we all stood in an uproarious applause, attempting to thank Reverend Serenity Cloudburst for her profound wisdom. But she raised her hands to silence us. Once we were settled, she spoke for the last time. Dear ones, you still don't seem to understand. Where do you think this wisdom came from? It came from you, my beloved ancestors. Go and live what you already know and live your lives in faith, not fear. We are depending on you. And then she departed. As Captain Corey prepared for takeoff, he woke the worms, and we sat in silence, contemplating what we had seen, heard, and felt. Then we began sharing insights that we could apply when we returned to 2021. Herb began by stating his amazement that UUFCC Fellowship of the Future had such an extensive social justice program. Obviously, they had entered into numerous partnerships with other churches and agencies. Gudrun said that she was so impressed with the number of children and the obvious harmony that existed between the young and the elders. Stephanie expressed her joy that clearly all races and ethnicities were represented in equal proportions. Laurie was overwhelmed by the general sense of harmony and the wide varieties of activities that were occurring concurrently. Alan and Jerry offered their joy as they listed all the indications that the environment was healthy and all creatures were thriving. And before we could begin to consider additional lessons, we had returned from our trip into the future. We were back where we started, and only 20 minutes had passed. As Bill and I unloaded the worm bins from the UUFCC ship of faith, I heard a loud yap and felt a warm, wet tongue on my cheek. Bosco needed to go outside. As I lifted him off the bed and headed for the lanai screen door, I regretted that our nap was over. As I waited for his return, I realized the dream will live on. Once again, I was aware of the importance of our beloved faith and this precious community that we have inherited. In deep gratitude, I offered a prayer of thanksgiving for all those who have brought us this far. I asked for patience, energy, compassion, guidance, laughter, and love for each of us as we build the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of tomorrow. The prayer ended with another yap. So I opened the screen and Bosco and I headed to the kitchen for a treat. Blessed be. And now we will hear the song, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Again, it's by the UUFCC Choir.
Come, come, whoever you are, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of the evening, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Ours is no caravan, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of the evening, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Ours is no caravan, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of the evening, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
The offering is a sacrament of the Free Church. It is supported by the generosity of all who join with us. There are several ways you can give. You can mail checks to the office, drop them in our mailbox, or call the office to make other arrangements. We are also equipped to accept donations through the Venmo app. Payments through this app should be made to UUFCC offering. If you would like your donation to apply to anything other than the operating fund, like our second helping, for example, please indicate your intentions in the check's memo line. Your generosity is always appreciated. And if you are with us for the first time, do not feel obligated to give. Today, you are our guests. Now it's time to highlight UUFCC's special events and activities. And there are several. Of course, Monday, Labor Day, we will still have a 4 p.m. Spanish class for beginners. And on Tuesday at 1 p.m., the worship associates will meet using the universal Zoom link. On Wednesday at 1, the caring committee will meet, again using the universal link. And then at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, there's a happy hour with John Lee. And again, use that universal link. In addition to that, I have a message from our president, Lori Douglas. There is going to be a UUA online workshop. It's from the Social Class Ally to Accomplish and Partnership workshop. It'll be on September 25th. And we have a few scholarships available for folks to participate in this opportunity. If you're interested, contact Lori. Just a little about it. It's working on challenging injustice, white supremacy, and inequality. And it's 90 minutes, fast moving, and highly interactive. Additionally, if you would like to have fellowship events highlighted during the service, you can email the worship associate at bookoflife@uufcc.org. Our closing words, again, were chosen by Sharon. They're from another Latina writer, Christina Henriquez. What I didn't understand, what I suddenly realize now, was if I stopped moving backwards, trying to recapture the past, there might be a future waiting for me, waiting for us, a future that would reveal itself if only I turned around and looked. And now, as Tim extinguishes our chalice, please join me in our traditional recitation. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of hope, the fire of commitment, or the warmth of community. May those ideals shine in our lives and warm our hearts until we are together again. Go now in peace.
Go now in peace, go